Uh, I was born into a military family, so we moved to California from Arkansas, and then we lived in Japan for a while. Then we went back to the States, to Texas, and I had a really kind of crappy childhood. My father left when I was 12 or 13, and my mother was a little crazy. So, but we managed to get by and moved up to Aurora, Colorado when my first husband died. And I had followed my mom and her rest of her brood up here. So I worked for Sears for a long time. I went through a lot of years of therapy, and I enjoyed music and philosophy. And in fact, I had a really neat experience in 1981 about and then when Richard Pryor was interviewed on a talk show about an incident he had when he almost set himself on fire with cocaine. And he said, just take one day at a time. Well, one day at a time for me back then was a lot because I was high strung and nervous and depressed and all that good stuff. So I was going to bed one night and all of a sudden everything stood still, like outer limits still. And from way deep down inside myself, this soft, calming male voice said, take this moment, and then take the next moment, and then take the next moment. And those words were so calming and so profound to me that it left a lasting effect on my life. And I was able to handle a lot of things better that I was learning in therapy with John McBride. So then I met Jack Clark and my whole world went upside down. Just crazy. So he was a biker guy and I was at that time I was an administrative assistant for an civil engineering and hazardous waste consulting firm. And so we took off on the bike all over the West and did some neat trips cross country, a neat trip across country where we rode the bike from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to Denver, Colorado, and picked up his friend Larry's truck. And we put the bike on the back and hauled it through Nashville and Memphis, Tennessee, and down into Yulee, Florida. So then we rode all the way back. Well, that was a really neat trip till we hit New Mexico, and then the weather turned to shit. So we froze our asses off in the rain the rest of the way home for 3 days, but it was an awesome trip. Awesome. So we've been to Florida a couple of times, we've been to Denver a couple of times, and just keep moving on. Have plans for the future. By the way, I have 2 wonderful adult children, Tracy Barrows and Justin Preston, and 2 wonderful granddaughters by my daughter, Kemi and Rachel. We moved to Coeur d'Alene about 20 years ago, and left Colorado and all my family. And when I say Jack discombobulated my whole life, he sure turned it upside down, because even though I loved motorcycles, I had never run with a biker or a biker group like my sister and brother-in-law, which was how I met Jack, through them. They had known him for like 6 years and became such a good friend that he went to my nephew's birthday party, and that's where I met him. And we started dating and just never stopped. Then when he had to get out of Denver because it had grown so bad and traffic was terrible, and he complained a lot about the traffic and the time spent in traffic and how long it takes to get anywhere because of traffic, and it was horrible. But I was hoping we could move closer than we did for my family, because he uprooted, and I didn't go with him at first because of my family. I loved him and I just couldn't do it. But then once he left and we were no more, it just became real clear to me that it was all wrong without him, just all wrong. And so I moved up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho with him, and we built this awesome house. And I kind of quit going to Sturgis with him because it was getting to be too much of a trek for me. But I went 15 times out of 18 years. And we've been together 26 years, so that's pretty good for an old lady. I went to community college and earned an associate's degree in accounting, which meant a lot more back in 1985 when I earned it. They don't even give, I think, associate degrees in accounting anymore. It's like a certificate or something. But, so I've worked as high as a junior accountant level position in different arenas. I had a neat experience at my last job. I was looking forward to retirement and didn't really think I was going to make it. And we had 2 new people hired in over me. And the person that they put me under was this real go-getter that started reorganizing and redoing and all this other stuff. And the other guy, the controller, brought in a new computer system that was way too involved for what we tried to do. And he kept trying to tell me not to do stuff that I had been told to do. And so it caused some friction with us. And finally, they wanted me to come in for a discussion because my supervisor had all this list of things that I wasn't doing for him. And I had the weekend to think about it. They didn't blindside me. And I thought, bullshit. Well, I told him on Friday that it wasn't going to happen because there was just no way it was going to happen. This guy was wanting me to do stuff way beyond my level of competence and not what I was hired to do, that anybody over him told me to do. Anyway, so I went in on Monday and I said, you guys have basically turned my job into a higher level position than I'm capable of doing. And so I was basically out of a job because they increased the position and I didn't accept those terms. So anyway, they were going to pay me this paltry amount of money to get rid of me. And I went and talked to the, not the supervisor, the manager. And I'd known her. She was one of the 2 people that hired me. And I went over their heads, both of my supervisors' heads, to her. And I said, you know, this is what they've done to me. And she said, well, what'll make you happy? And I said, $10,000. So she upped that to like $10,181 or something stupid like that. But I got a lot more money out of her to leave than I was going to get out of them. And then I collected unemployment for a year and a half, and then I retired. Never skipped a beat in payments from unemployment because that was when they kept extending it. So like my son said, I won in that battle. One of the few, but that was a good one. Back in June of 1991, Justin and I went down to, we flew into Miami, then drove down to Key Largo and spent a couple of days there and went to Pinnacamp Forest or whatever, Mango Swamps or whatever it was. And then we went on down to Key West and did the parasailing.
Florida.
Okay, when Rachel graduated from high school, that's my youngest granddaughter, I flew to Denver from Spokane, Washington to go to her graduation. And then my other granddaughter, Cammie, and Rachel and I flew to Jacksonville, Florida, because my granddaughters had never seen the ocean before and I wanted to show them. So we flew into Jacksonville, Florida, and went to the beaches and saw the ocean. I just want to embrace the ocean when I see it. It's so amazing. And the girls really had a thrill. We met a lady that I used to work for, and she fed us dinner one night. And then the three of us drove on up to Savannah, Georgia, and spent a day and had a good old time in Savannah, Georgia. It's so pretty with the Spanish moss and all that stuff. And then we drove on up the coast to Charleston, South Carolina. Went to the museum, uh, the aquarium there, had our pictures taken, had a good old time. We rode out to Fort Sumter one day from one of those ports and just had a good old time there. And then I flew back to Denver to escort my granddaughters back home. And then I flew home. It was a great trip.
That was going to Boston and Salem and
Oh, gosh.
Freedom Trail and all that shit.
When Justin and Connie were living out in Boston, Justin and I were talking and just kind of mentioned, gee, it'd be neat to go out there. And so Jack and I flew out, went to Boston, went to Salem, went to, we went up the coast to New Hampshire Beach and then up to Maine and had an awesome crab sandwich in Kittery, Maine, I think it was. And then we drove back down, saw some horses on the beach in New Hampshire. No.
That was in Massachusetts.
Oh.
Hampton State Beach.
We were still in Massachusetts. Oh, well. It was gorgeous back there. We had a good time. And then on Halloween, we were there for Halloween. So we went to Salem, where all the witch stuff was. Had a good time. Really enjoyed that. And all the people in costumes, they were awesome. There were some really inventive, artistic costumes that were just amazing that these people had on. The streets were filled. It was fun. And then we also walked the Freedom Trail through Boston. I bought a shirt at Artists for Humanity. And we went on the USS Constitution. And that's a gorgeous ship. Just beautiful. And the captain came on board while we were there and gave a little speech. It was really neat. Really enjoyed that trip.
Battleship Cove.
Oh, yeah. While we were there, we went to this place called Battleship Cove. And there were World War II ships and submarines there. And we toured the USS Massachusetts, had lunch on board. It was pretty neat. Pretty neat. Called Battleship Cove in Fall River, Massachusetts. Gorgeous. Worth the trip. Oh, one of our trips back from Sturgis, we were in Rock Springs, Wyoming, on a Sunday. And I was sick as a dog, sicker than I am now. Had all infected sinuses and just miserable. And Jack's clutch cable went out on a Sunday. with nothing open in Rock Springs, Wyoming. So we pulled into this gas station. We were standing around talking, trying to decide what we were going to do. And this guy came up and asked us about what was going on. And so we told him, and he was actually friends of the guy that had a motorcycle shop in the next little town. And so he called him up. The guy went in on a Sunday on his day off and opened up the shop so we could no clutch it all the way there and get it fixed so we could get home. That was funny. That's Jack's luck. Another time, Jack and me and Cindy and Chuck were riding down 25 near the Colorado state border, and this cop went by and shook his finger at Jack because we were speeding. He's always in the lead speeding. And we got to the next stop, and Chuck says, "I can't believe that cop didn't pull you over. I'd have been on the side of the road in 2 seconds flat." And Jack's luck is they just shake their finger at him. He's a bad boy. And let him go. We've been to state prisons in Rawlins, Wyoming. We've been to Great Falls, Montana, and Helena, Montana. Pretty place. Hand me my map. I collect pins from all the states I've been in because I've been in a lot of states. So I don't know if you can see this.
Hold it up just a little more. Yeah, that's good.
There we go. Can you see all my pins all over the United States? Those are all the states I've been in. Not necessarily on a motorcycle. Jack said they didn't count unless I was on a motorcycle. And I said, bull, because I'd been to too many without him already. So that's my collection of state pins. I'm really proud of them. Rode the motorcycle from Coeur d'Alene to Denver. Picked up his friend Larry's truck. Then trailered the bike through Memphis and Nashville and down to Yulee, Florida, near Jacksonville. And then we rode the motorcycle all the way from Yulee, Florida, back across the panhandle of Florida, the panhandle of Mississippi, into Louisiana, where we had some awesome chicken, fried chicken. And then we went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and visited my mom's grave and my sister's grave. And then we hit the corner of Arkansas and across the Oklahoma panhandle to New Mexico, where the weather went to shit. And we froze and were wet all the way back home for 3 days. But it was an incredible journey, and we went almost all the way across the United States. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and we really enjoyed it. We also stopped at the French Quarter in New Orleans, Louisiana on the way back. That was neat. Spent a night there. Cool. When Justin was a baby, I got to stay home with him and not work for a while. And so I took up painting. I had drawn before a lot and sketched. But I wanted to paint and see how some of those things would turn out in color. So I went to the high school, the local high school, and took some night classes in acrylic painting. Even though I wanted to paint in oils, I thought acrylics would be easier to clean up with. And I didn't do too bad in comparison with other people in the class, and the materials were okay. So I took a couple of 10-week oil painting classes. Well, I've been painting ever since, and that was when Justin was a baby, and he's 42 years old now. So that's how long I've been painting. And if you could switch the camera around, you'd see canvases piled up everywhere that I've painted. I work mostly in acrylics now and really enjoy it. And they are easier to clean up. And I also go to a ceramics place once a week and paint there. That's fun too. It has taught me a lot of patience to help with my other paintings on canvas.